Good afternoon, and welcome to the February 8th meeting of the Energy and Environmental Conservation Committee. I'm Cynette Cavaliere, the chair, and as tradition, I would like to have the people in the committee introduce themselves.
Roy Green, committee member.
Daniel Moore, committee member.
Kevin Barry, town councilman.
Sarah Waterman, sustainability engineer.
Matt Prenzing, junior planner.
Okay.
And I would like to acknowledge Pat Schichler will arrive during the meeting, so you'll see her at some point.
Yes, definitely, and hear from her.
Yep.
Okay. I think I'm missing something, but we'll see here. So our first agenda item is review and approval of minutes from January 11th. You all have received those in the email, via email. Are there any corrections or adjustments? If so, can I have a motion to approve them?
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I don't expect Pat would have any issues, or she probably would have advised us. The second item on our agenda is my standing report from Monroe County Environmental Management Council, which hopefully you will show it because I neglected to print a copy out for myself. This is from the January 17th meeting, which we had as a joint meeting of the Monroe County Environmental Management Council, as well as the Monroe County Recycling Advisory Committee. I should say that, yes. So I think I got those right. So we got to hear over a little bit about the purposes of both organizations. Yay, Pat, which I'm hoping to be able to do in more depth in my notes for next month, because I think it's a really good opportunity to see what the two organizations' purposes are, which kind of gives some credence to why we're involved specifically in the Environmental Management Council. But I did want to highlight some things. We also had a presentation from EcoPark, which I am a huge fan of. So I wanted just to make sure that there are some things that everybody is aware of with the EcoPark. I don't think we can do enough, even as residents of Penfield, to applaud that effort, as well as to encourage our residents to use it. Started in 2011. Pretty much still a model of something that a county has in place for recycling. They did give us lots of statistics. The one that was kind of most notable was that electronics is the largest weight category recycled. And then it's also the largest growing category. They hit a new high in 2023 based on the idea that it's finally no fee. So there's no fee now required for recycling electronics. Thanks to the New York State regulations regarding it. So that's a really good thing for residents to know. I will remind, just because it's one of the things that I think I get frustrated, electronics cannot be put out for your delivery with your normal, or pick up with your normal trash people. They leave them, they sit there, and that's not good. Remote household hazardous waste events are scheduled through the Monroe County, this Monroe County Environmental Organization. Penfield and Webster share an event, Swap Towns yearly. So in 2024, it will be in Penfield, and that will hit our agenda in not too long from now, I think, to make sure the planning of it's happening. Monroe County Sheriff's Department is very interested in making sure that pharmaceuticals, unwanted, unused pharmaceuticals, do not hit the streets. And so they are very proactive in collecting them. And actually, the statement was made that they will come and pick them up from residents who cannot get to EcoPark or another collection site. And that there's also a mail-in option for unwanted pharmaceuticals. And then the paint care program was something that was introduced. It's fairly new. So when you buy paint, you actually pay a fee for recycling, a little bit like a core charge for some other things, except it's a by gallon. And then lots of places that sell paint have opted in to collect the paint and have it recycled, reused appropriately. Sherwin-Williams across Rochester, almost every one of their stores has paint recycling available. And then just a note for small businesses, if you are a small business and you are a conditionally exempt small quantity generator, so the smallest of hazardous waste generators, you can work with Monroe County, and they have a special program so that Eco Park would manage their hazardous waste. I think that's pretty big, especially since I know the cost of managing hazardous waste if you have to go to a commercial facility. There is a Monroe County recycling app for phones, and you can also get it on Alexa. And then there's a lot of information, posters and magnets that are available that tell you what can be recycled in Monroe County, either through your collection, recycling collection, or at Eco Park. So just a reminder for wish cycling. And I guess I left one of them off that I did want to also say was just the idea of vapes and those other kind of devices that they have are a problematic waste. And so Eco Park is one of the few places that's actually collecting those and recycling / disposing of those properly. So that's something that's interesting that's happening. Those should also not go in the trash that goes curbside. And then I just put a note down there for the privilege of the floor that they have at every meeting. We ran out of time, obviously, lots of good discussion on Eco Park. And so Sarah had set me up with some good news to share about Penfield, and I didn't have a chance to share it, but we'll always have the reminder there if there's any other messages going on that we want to be able to share. Our next meeting is February 21st, and we'll be getting a tutorial on seeker, which I believe the planning board deals with, and that's something that we don't necessarily have to deal with, fortunately.
But I think that'll still be educational for this committee as to what considerations they make when the planning board's reviewing seeker.
I think that in the past, educational pieces that we could take as a committee are offered through Monroe County. I believe I've taken a seeker class before.
There are seeker classes. When those get posted again, we'll send them out to the
Yeah, I know they
committee members.
usually come by.
Yep.
Lots of information.
Yeah, just for the audience, do you know the acronym?
State
State-
environmental.
Yeah, quality review.
Environmental.
Quality.
So it's SECRA.
Quality
There's
what?
actually an L at
Oh,
the
there's-
end, I mean
okay.
an A at the end. Yeah, so it's State Environmental
Assessment
Quality Review Act. So,
Isn't it state environmental quality assessment?
yeah.
Quality Review Act. Ooh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt is on it,
Secret.
thank you. Faster than a Googler of any other kind. Okay. Any questions on the report?
Do you know if on the paint can recycling, are they going to turn away like maybe old cans that maybe wouldn't have had a surcharge for recycling on them?
No, they'll take anything. The goal
Okay.
is to get the liquid paint, if they're dry
Yes.
cans,
Yeah, it's not
that's
gonna
not
be,
a
right, the
problem,
liquid
but
paint.
yes.
Okay, all right.
And there's specific quantities, and that's what you'd need to look on the website for, is up to 5 gallons a day is here, greater than 5 gallons would be somewhere else. So
Okay.
that they would,
That's-
they'd kind of tell you. Okay, next is our review of required items. So thank goodness that, Pat, you were not delayed too long because the
No,
first
I
one.
was driving and thinking and said, where am I? At one point realized I was 5 miles past.
Yep. So our first one is on town development projects. Matt, do you want to, you going to kick us off here with the scoop?
Yeah. Pat, Daniel, and Roy had submitted the appendment to the committee's report. Staff had very minor changes, mostly formatting. I think the one that I actually just made when reviewing this today was that, because I had shared with the committee that there was a new landscape plan submitted by the applicant this week. And I actually noticed that we'd never actually cited a landscape plan in either the original report or the appendment.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
where I added this line here in supporting documents that has the full plan set revised, and that
Okay.
includes the landscape plan that was considered and mentioned the 66 trees. And like here's
Your-
the landscape plan indicating, yes,
Right.
right,
Your date is wrong.
December, oh, yes, thank you. That'd be December 8th, 2023. Yes, and then I did reorder it so that it's in chronological order for these items that were submitted, but.
Okay.
Yeah, the tracked changes here, I guess I did add that it's the date of.
You added the date of report
Date of
rather than
report
just
and then date of
date.
appendment.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the other changes were primarily just.
And I think they were bullets or or.
Right, yeah, just very minor
Cap
things,
or not
but,
cap.
yeah, in terms of the observations, the concerns, comments, recommendations, in the summary section, we felt that, this was, yeah, ready to be sent to the planning board, and, so that was included in their, drop inventory, so they get their material, the planning board gets their materials on the Friday before their meeting, so they received a draft, and then I will give them this final version between our meetings, given that it's approved here.
But the essence of the report you gave them is pretty much the same, except for listing the landscape plan and the
Yes.
date of report,
And
I think
the
it
difference
was.
is it has a draft watermark,
Yeah.
just to make sure
That-
it's very
yes, that's
clear
true.
that it was a draft,
Right.
that it had not yet been approved.
Yes, okay,
Um,
thank you.
So I think we'd open it up to if there's any comments that anyone wants to make on this document. Or if there's
So
a
that'd just be
motion.
me, right? Because you guys,
Yeah.
Wrote it, yeah.
you guys wrote it.
And just
Or
to be
Kevin, I
clear,
suppose.
because this was specifically Roy's first project review, we paired him with two previous conservation board members. When Cynette has her first review, we'll pair her with two members that have already done this, just so that she has the support as Roy in this time had the support.
Yep, yep.
But after that, it'll just be two people or members reviewing projects.
Okay.
But there's been some where we've felt that they were extremely broad and meaty projects where, we've had as many as 4 people going out just to get different, of course, there was a larger conservation
And
board,
if
but-
if it's a project that's large and has, I don't remember the acreage, but Panorama Park was a very large, physically large project with hills and valleys and so many trees. So like that, we would probably make different considerations. Just, I wanted the committee members to understand kind of what the standard is.
Okay.
If no one has comments on this, would anyone like to make a motion?
My job.
Oh, sorry. Please.
I'm not going to
So-
motion our own report.
Well, we might be in trouble with
Well,
that then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just, I have read the report. Is there anything that you wish to highlight to me that I might not have caught in nuance, or you guys are very pleased with it and?
So the only thing I would mention is that we deliberately did not mention the quality rating of what was submitted by who submitted that?
The developer and their engineer.
Their engineering firm, right? So the quality rating was something that we felt didn't need to be mentioned because it was really not relevant to the fact that there's a certain number of trees in the area and those trees are being taken down. And so we
Okay.
did not mention it.
Okay. Okay, is there one of you that will make a motion for approval of this, of this draft?
I would move to approve this draft appendment report.
I would second.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. All approved?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That's all of us.
Great. Then we can continue on to requests from the town board. The town board requested that this committee review comments from the town board, and with the information that Matt sent out last week. It included this document provided by the town board, which is just specific comments on the town tree law. At this time, they did not request a formal report or anything like that, just for the committee to discuss.
Is that the one that was compiled by Candace?
Yes.
Okay, make sure I'm doing this. No, I think just some of the things that she raised about the designated person, you know, were, and also, let's see how she phrased it, like a work plan or whatever. I'm reading that quickly. Were things that we had discussed. I believe.
Yes.
You know, that those were issues that we had, you know, struggled with as well.
Yes, I think we really had hoped that the understanding of what all would be in a forestry plan would be enough to kind of give this some meat without fear, knowing that the forestry plan would redefine authorities and some of the other things that are making people uneasy.
And I think the point also is that this is something being, Daniel, you could correct me if I'm wrong, that being code, that most other towns have followed the same mantra in the sense that the code is written a certain way, it's going to be passed that way, it is now rigid in the sense that it would have to be voted on again to change that, where if we are basing on the forestry plan, as things may change, that it's the forestry plan that may be more fluid, so that it does not have to go for code review every time a nuance is changed, and such as, you know, forestry plans can change.
And to give you some specifics on the parts of that discussion, like the nuanced things you're talking about, we discussed what regulations we should have on how trees are maintained or how trees are pruned. Those can change as new information is learned. So although there are standards, like the Arbor Day Foundation has standards, as well as the APWA, those can be changed. So if we refer to those in the plan or specifics from those in the forestry plan, then that would allow the town to have more, as you put, fluidity, or I think that's the right word.
That's what I used. I don't know if it's accurate, but
It would have more wiggle room for the town to adjust quickly as things change in those fields. And that's part of the reason that the town was hoping to have an arborist work on the forestry plan with us,
Right.
just because they are more the experts than
Yeah.
all of us here.
And I really feel that because we said that the director of the Department of Public Works would have to work within the guidelines of the town's design construction specifications and the town forestry plan, that was limiting that authority. You know, it's not a willy-nilly maintenance of trees. It's a very specific.
in other words, there's some oversight on that, that director of.
I do
Public
agree with
Works.
you, but in the interim, while if the local tree law is adopted now and it takes time to create the forestry plan and do a town tree inventory as part of the forestry plan, my current understanding is that the town board has a concern that there aren't regulations put down now for what that maintenance standard is.
Okay.
So I don't currently know if the town board wants an interim item like plan or just wants the forestry plan all at the same time. I think that's part of what either they're looking for a recommendation long-term for or looking for more information from this committee.
Okay, yeah. So Matt, I think we had asked the question for you just to double check on the timing of communities and forest plans, whether because we'd noticed at least one town had a gap of 5 years between the law and the forestry plan. Did you have any chance to see if that was typical or?
It varies quite a lot. And I think that it's difficult to really determine in some cases where, you know, you have a town tree law that's adopted and then a forestry plan that is enacted, you know, in years or, you know, sometime afterwards. But that doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't any type of standards of practice that preceded the law. And so that's kind of that gray area of we're not in, you know, it seems that what the town board wants is at least some standards of practice in place that, you know, holds the director accountable. And while municipalities now have that solidified and documented in their forestry plan, there may have been some sort of documentation. So I've reached out to some municipalities, but in some cases, you know, their town tree law has been on the books for 20 years or 15 years, and some may not recall what their standards were prior to the law. Yeah, so it's, I would say that there are some municipalities that are going through the effort to update just their standards of practice, or, you know, are doing full-scale rewrites of their town forestry plan. But yeah, there's really no set practice. I know that, set timeline for putting together a forestry plan. I think, you know, there's, Arundecoit was one that I had reached out to, and so they have their town tree law, and they recently published a document that is more advisory on arboricultural specifications and planting guidelines, but it's not what I would consider a full-fledged forestry plan, because a forestry plan is very comprehensive. It has goals that are set forth, much like a town comprehensive plan for, you know, 10 years into advance. So, yeah, it's more, you know, getting to know what the town board, or really what, you know, having input from this committee as well of what we could want in our town forestry plan. And I mean, like we said, the forestry plan is very fluid. It can be adapted to change with what demands the town has. And so, yeah, it can be, as the forestry plan could be something as simple as putting together standards of practice and adopting that, but eventually you would want something that is more comprehensive and would have goals that are reaching out to improve the town forest.
May I chime in on this?
Yes.
So I don't know all of the details because some of this predates me, and I can't speak on behalf of all of the town board members because different people have different opinions. You know, I think part of the concern that has come up is this decision-making capability being put in the hands of one person, regardless of who that person is. Also, that person is a town employee, and that there's not any civilian involvement, any citizen involvement in it. You know, so the possibility of there being that involved as well is part of what I think that members are finding to be important.
I think that a couple things here, and as you said, some of this has been going on before you became part of this, is that we have at least a couple times mentioned asking for the department to memorialize their practices, because they do have a practice that they follow, but to my knowledge, there's nothing in writing. So I would fall back to say that we couldn't necessarily, at this group as a committee, make up what the practices should be and put it in this tree code without their input, so that I would have to fall back on them. Perhaps we, as far as the citizen, we specifically talked about other people. We even talked about the department being involved back with this board. However, and citizenry, and we thought that we did not want to create something so hampering that this limb or this tree is about to come down. How are we going to convene the necessary people? Do they actually none of us are arborists, you know, citizen input certainly, but we don't know that that citizen's an arborist. So we didn't want to hamper something that needs to be taken care of versus, you know, harm that could come to somebody. So I get where, you know, I get those concerns, because believe me, we have discussed them all. Perhaps something that could be done is saying follow, in the, maybe a line, I don't know if this is appropriate, but in the interim of a town forestry plan to follow such and such. You mentioned them yourself, I think,
The
Sarah.
Arbor Day Foundation has,
Yes.
I forgot the specific name of it, just,
Agricultural specification.
thank you.
Yeah, to follow something, you know, to say, I don't know if that would work. And, you know, I don't know your thought, you know, you can only speak for yourself, or if, you know, if something as an interim, because that would fluctuate in itself. And it would be a stopgap to say, well, we'll follow this until we have a town-tailored forestry plan.
And that would actually give the opportunity of, if the town has specific specifications that they prefer over certain specifics of the Arbor Day Foundation or the APWA, the town's specifics in their forestry plan can override those other
Sure.
like documented ones.
And then I would just pursue urging on the Department of Public Work, is it DPW that?
Yep.
Yeah, to really, you know, and maybe they've already started and have been putting things in writing in regards to trees on, you know, town trees and what they currently follow, so that can be shared and say, well, we're going to, you know, in lieu of a tree preservation plan, we are going to follow the department's written procedures.
And I'm sure that you folks have discussed this, but another issue that you reminded me of when you mentioned the arborist was that the person who's making these decisions has the requisite knowledge to be able to make those kind of decisions about what's a healthy tree, what needs to come down, what can be trimmed, et cetera.
Right, and there, you know, there might need to be, I hate to say, you know, but some qualification, again, made to that. I don't know that our personnel are arborists, but if you see a limb hanging,
Yeah, there's a difference
I
between
can give you some information on that.
Emergency.
So,
Yeah.
emergency and,
So the town doesn't yet have an arborist. We're in the process of that and working with other towns to kind of get what they've done so that we can get a town arborist. We just have the budget right now. That'll be brought to the town board at a future meeting. Separate from an arborist, speaking to the DPW and their qualifications between the Parks Department and the director of the DPW. There's actually classes with the Cornell Cooperative that a number of the employees, actually all of the Parks Department, but I understand other employees at the DPW go to on tree pruning, just as Eric, the DPW director, has brought to this committee before one of the classes and presented on it that he attended. So I think maybe having some documentation of those classes,
would they?
I believe that the DPW director documents all of the different classes that they
I
send
would
their
think.
employees to. So I think having that provided to the town board might actually be helpful as well.
So Kevin, what's the concern? Is that the director or whoever is the authority would not be making the right decisions, or that there's a concern about they would be taking trees down indiscriminately? Because right now, if there's a hazard situation, they take down limbs or they take down trees to address those hazard situations, as they should. But what is the real concern?
Again, I can't speak for everyone on the board.
Sure.
You know, I think that part of it is, you know, there's a difference between there being a hazardous limb or a hazardous tree and making the decision to like take out multiple trees for some
Sure.
reason. And I think that's more the concern is, and this doesn't have anything to do with Eric or anybody, you know, personally.
Sure.
But that, you know, a position, you know, would potentially have the ability to decide that a number of trees could be taken out for any particular reason, and those kinds of things.
And I
we
can
don't.
probably help with that too. So, like, for example, last year, a number of trees were taken out at Shadow Pines in the first section of the disc golf area because they were infected by the
Ash borer?
ash borer. And then some of them actually specifically had the ash borers in them. So those trees were taken down. Thankfully, we're working on getting some of them replaced. But that would be something that's not imminently hazardous that it's going to fall down tomorrow or today. But it is long-term a hazard because it has an infection that can spread between trees.
And we were talking at some point in time that some of it's just communication.
Yes.
Some of it's the idea that when 20 trees disappear from a space and nobody knows why, that it would make sense to be able to have some sort of communication link out there so that people in the town know why these trees were selected.
And we do have citizens who come forth and
Yes.
say, there
What'd you
were
do?
multiple trees taken out, and they looked healthy to me, so
Yeah.
that's part of it.
But that's hard to put in a law.
But that could be written into their procedural specifications, is that, we certainly don't want to hamper their process of doing business to the detriment of people, becoming injured. And we certainly, even in the stand of trees that's diseased, I don't know.
We don't want to lose more trees.
We don't want to
because
lose
disease
more
spreads.
trees because it's going to take a month to get a consensus to take the stand down. But it could be, on the other hand, that when something like that is done, that part of their procedure, okay, we did this, this is why we did this, now we post this in such and such a section, and that's part of their method of operation that
Or
is
even
included.
Or even it can be before the trees are removed if possible. So
Right, if
like if it's
possi-
possible,
which
working
leads
with the
open to allow.
communications director, which I think now that we have a specific communications director position, which started, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Now that we have that position, that's caused a lot more communication with residents through social media and through the town website to share more about what's going on, just as I think this week they shared about a project at Rothfuss Park, just to help residents be more educated on what's going on in town. And if they have those questions, they would know where to go.
And
to get
certainly
the
as a
I agree.
board member, the town supervisor, not be like, I don't know why they took them, because the buck
Right.
stops with you. They always want to be able to answer townspeople.
Okay,
So-
so, go ahead,
I
Roy.
was gonna say, I think there's some other comments on here that might be worth looking into as well, so like,
Yeah, let's, I think, wrap this one up, though, the authority, because I think the
Yeah.
authority is a big sticking point. So are there alternatives that we would want to put out there? Or, I think we were comfortable at this idea of saying the director, knowing that the plan was that the other criteria are in there.
And,
But I've
and to be
mentioned-
clear, it wasn't just the director. Part of the authority section did include the director working with other departments.
Right.
Most often, they work with the engineering department.
When you mentioned the park department,
That's part of the DPW.
oh, okay.
Oh. Yeah, so Parks is ran by the Parks foreman, and that is under the DPW.
Okay.
It's
Well-
separate from Parks and Rec.
Well, I think I mentioned, my discussion was actually a couple suggestions, as one to put in there in the specifically in the interim, we will follow written procedurals from the parks, from the DPW, but we'd have to go back to them and, see can they accomplish this within.
so we already have that, don't we? So guidelines of the town's design and construction specifications, the town
That-
forestry plan.
The guidance exists, right?
So the
Construction-
town construction specifications don't actually give direction to the DPW on how to maintain the trees. They give direction on the DPW of recommended tree plantings.
Okay.
And most often, those are for construction, not specifically like town projects. But they, like I said, they do give direction on tree plantings.
So could those guidelines also reference back to the APWA that you mentioned?
those guidelines could, they would have to get reviewed by the town board because it's that kind of document. So I don't think it's necessary to do it separate from this. My recommendation would, if you're looking to have specific authorities that we refer to, or if we refer to the Arbor Day Foundation or the APW, then I think it would be reasonable to put that in this section if the committee members feel that's appropriate. And I would go with Pat's suggestion of in the interim of the forestry plan. And then I would hope that long-term with the forestry plan, we would likely refer to those as well in that document. And then just if we have different specifications we want to be followed as well, we would have those override any sections in the Arbor Day Foundation arboricultural specifications.
Do you have enough of a sense to frame something in writing that we can look at?
I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Daniel, you were about to say something.
Yes, I was wondering, like, we only have both Kevin's and also Candace's opinions on it. Would it be necessary / important of us to listen to what the rest of the town board wants as well? Because I know.
So I believe at the beginning of the email that was sent out, it actually said these were comments from the town board, not like Candace was sending them on behalf of the town board. Right?
She compiled
It did
them.
say that,
Summarized, it's called summarized
Okay.
feedback, so I
Yeah.
would assume they were
So,
statements from a variety of people.
I would think that these comments represent values from the whole town board based on that presentation. Whether one comment is from one person or one comment's from another, I don't know. But I think it would be appropriate if you feel that those changes should be included, we can draft something and provide it to you. And our hope as staff was to discuss internally with the town supervisor and possibly town board members to see if there's any other specifics that we can provide them to help through this process.
So it would be nice too if they can make some suggestions of what they'd like to see in response to their comments.
To me, it would be nice to know is, are they actually pushing for a community committee or something to provide oversight? Curiosity, Sarah, in your role as a sustainability engineer, I mean, is this something that you could be added to the Director of Public Works as in consultation with, or
Arborist, when we get one.
the
I think
arborist
an
when we get
arborist
one?
would be very appropriate. We would just have to work with the town board to define what the role of the arborist is, because it can be small or it can be huge, and there's a different cost to the different levels of support we would be receiving. And currently, the budget for the arborist is not large, just because it's the first time they created a budget for an arborist. And obviously, that can change over time. I think my position might be appropriate. I think the engineering department specifically, like just as a department, that would cover both any concerns with drainage, any concerns with canopy coverage, any concerns with getting grants for replacing the trees, which is something that the town has been moving forward with since last year. That might be more appropriate, like to specify the engineering department, just
I would-
because that covers more roles that would be appropriate than just mine.
I would prefer that than coming up with, say, anything that's listed as oversight, because from my background, 35 years in government, instituting a program of laws, Medicaid and food stamp policy, that would not want anything that is going to prevent, a day-to-day operation because of having, an oversight. I mean, if there's a law and you still have to do the work. A new law comes out, you have to do the work, you have to implement it.
And also having the engineering department rather than just one specific in person would allow flexibility if someone is sick for a week or has to be out because they have COVID or something
Right.
unexpected. That would cover the not stopping operations because of one person.
Yeah, and I'm not against any oversight, because there should, but more communications going, and as things go on, maybe, the stand of trees that's diseased, that may have some immediacy to it. But there's other things, well, we think all this should go, but it's not anything to do with that. That could, must needs feedback.
And I will say that the supervisor is putting a lot of emphasis on customer service and on things not being arduous and taking a long time that shouldn't. I don't think anyone on the town board wants to make it more difficult to accomplish something that needs to be accomplished. But at the same time, I think that we take our role of, being the protectors of the environment, among other things, very seriously. So I think that's part of what's going on. So-
Well, all we can do is try and see if that, meets.
I think in my opinion, I think that's a good start. Matt and I can draft something that we feel fits what you're talking about,
Okay.
with the appropriate documents to support, just so we can give the committee members references to look at of what documents we're actually looking to adopt, to include.
So just, at one of the meetings, Eric, when he did come in and gave us, his overview, we had recommended that some procedures start, and I think you had told me that is indeed underway.
That's my current understanding.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not supervisory to any of them,
Okay.
so I can't direct that. But that's my current understanding, that they're looking to get procedures more documented.
Okay.
And that started with documenting a pilot program for meadow mowing last
Okay.
year.
Okay, I
They
think
already
that would
do
be.
it now. They already do all of it now, it's just putting it in writing.
Right.
Making it look pretty. That's always important.
Okay.
It needs to be readable.
So I think the authority component, I think we've
Killed
really
it.
talked about. So as Roy said, there's some other comments. Which one would you like us to tackle next, Roy?
Well, I think we should probably just go down the list.
Okay.
I think they're all relatively worth talking through. So town tree clearly defined. So how do we define town tree?
Tree or woody vegetation on town-owned or town-maintained property or town right-of-way.
So the example they're provided in the comment is easement across private property.
Is it possible to put them side by side?
So the question was, will a resident be notified, clearly communicated with, that DPW crews will be on site and removing a tree, potentially disturbing other vegetation and dirt surrounding a hazardous tree?
That would be back to their policies written down.
So my understanding is, and because I brought this up to the DPW director, is if there is a tree on a resident's property, but in an easement, so it's not a town tree if it's in an easement,
That's right.
then that would have to be a discussion between the resident and the town. However, I will acknowledge that easements, all of the easements that I've read, including ones going back to like the 70s, if they're storm sewer easements or sanitary sewer easements, they include that trees and any structures are not allowed to be planted in an easement. And that is because the roots of that vegetation can compromise the storm sewer or the sanitary sewers. So that easement technically gives the right to the town to remove that because it could be impacting the sewer. However, again, my current understanding is that the DPW does notify residents when they're taking trees out of an easement. Similar to when we're working on sidewalk projects, like putting sidewalks in neighborhoods, if a tree has to come out because the sidewalk needs to go in where that tree is, because there's only so much room within the right-of-way, then we have previously contacted the resident to let them know the tree is coming out. We also often get grading releases in case anything affects their property when grading is done afterwards. And that is part of the process of working with them to let them know what's going on.
So should we get DPW to look at this and confirm?
I think it would be appropriate for the DPW to provide a response to that comment.
Right. But other than that, I think our definition of town tree is as,
I think it's as
kind of-
specific and accurate as it can be.
yes, clear.
Specifically in this case, because a tree in an easement is not a town tree. And trees are not allowed to be in easements, in most easements.
And the little sub-comment related to that says, what if a resident tree commingles along town and personal property lines?
We follow the law of it, and I don't know the specific wording of the law relating, but we follow that if it's on town property, the town is allowed to cut at the property line, just as if it's on your property, you're allowed to cut at your property line. If it's possible to not affect a tree hanging over a property line, the town tries not to.
And I don't know that there's any necessarily requirement, even like between two neighbors, your branches are hanging over my side. I don't think there's any requirement in, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't
So-
think there's any requirement in that law to say, I'm gonna trim this that's hanging over my roof.
I think that goes back to a communication concern and customer service concern.
Within the
of if-
town,
If the
right.
town is going to affect something that is adjacent to someone's property, then there may be the desire to, and I'm speaking of what I think, there may be
Yeah.
the desire to provide information to that resident of, hey, your tree might be affected because it's hanging over the town land.
And that would,
Yep.
that would make sense.
Yep.
So that's my current understanding.
Yeah, I would say we don't really have to change anything on
Right.
Yes.
definitions or,
Okay.
Hopefully that's enough.
But yes, I
Our
think it might be
discussion is enough.
appropriate for the DPW to respond to what the process is if a tree is in an easement.
And if they, that response, since it's going to be written, that can be if they didn't have anything already written down, that can begin to be
The
included
procedures.
in their write-ups, their specifications.
it's because they deal with this now.
What's that?
They deal with this now,
Yes.
Right, but it just may not be written.
right?
Right.
But since they respond in writing, now it will be written.
Yep. Okay, so the third one is on the definition of hazard. And I know that, once again, we spent a considerable amount of time on the definition of hazard. So, Matt, do you want to go ahead and read that one, just so we have it?
Yeah, so this is from the town resolution that was submitted. Any tree or limb thereof that has an infectious disease or insect is dead or dying, obstructs the view of traffic signs or the free passage of pedestrians or vehicles, threatens electrical, telephone, gas, or any municipal water or sewer infrastructure, or poses a risk to public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay. So the question, is it too broad? I think the concern is in our use of adding the word insect, which of course is unfortunately our primary hazard, I think, for trees these days is insect. So,
I think it's a valid comment, though. I think, because it's like a tree could have an insect, and it's like, oh, now I'm gonna take that tree down because it had an insect. But their comment says, maybe say something like beyond commercially reasonable remediation efforts.
so what do we actually say happens?
So, under Section 3 authority, in the very last sentence, it says, "This shall include the maintenance or removal of any town tree or limb thereof that is deemed a hazard." And so the town board comment is assuming that a hazardous tree has to be removed, where we have it written in the code that it can be maintained. So if it comes from the director or from engineering or from the arborist, that there is maintenance that can be done to the tree to address the hazardous element of it, then that would be considered. It's not that hazardous trees are always taken down.
Right, but I think specifically with infectious diseases and insects, it's not a maintenance, it's a remediation or a,
Like getting sprayed
like an
or
insect spray.
cutting off the affected
Right, which is maintenance of the tree.
Which
In
is
other
Yeah.
words, they're
Yeah.
not gonna cut down a whole tree if it's treatable and affordable treatable, which is also a concern
Right.
within a town,
And
but.
likely to be, a chance of success, in other words.
So
Right.
we don't define maintenance, though.
We don't yet define maintenance, because that's part of the responsibility to plant, prune, maintain, and remove. So we've thrown that back into the DPW's policies and practices.
Right, and they have not written down a defined maintenance definition either.
Right.
So there's another one that could be a good start.
I'm just saying, like,
No, I agree with you, because there's
Yeah.
insects, and there's ones where I'm gonna lop off the section that has the gypsy moth
Right,
all over it,
that's-
and then there's the other one
that's
that's got
maintenance.
the
You're cutting
borers,
and
which
trimming.
is, the tree's likely to go.
but treatment, remediation is a different, like, I guess you theoretically could call it maintenance, but to me, that's mitigation.
Yeah. I mean, that's a word, just a word difference, but no, I think our intent was if, you know,
Would you feel better if mitigation was included in that part that's highlighted?
Yeah, or remediation, mitigation, those two words, potentially. I
Is
would
there-
feel better.
Is one or both?
I would say mitigation's a better word.
Okay.
Yes.
yeah, we can certainly.
I mean, if that's the concern, I think it's fine to make that change, because I would be concerned with maintenance or remediation, providing a definition that we wouldn't cover the expanse of what that can include by providing a definition for it. But if we were to include it in that sentence that we're specifically discussing, I think that might add some comfort or correct or provide some needed direction
Right.
within the code.
And I think, and then I also think that that would, in addition to the communication piece, which
'Cause-
is what was described here.
Because, I mean, there
is-
can be ants on a tree and you're not gonna lop it off and you're not gonna
Right.
do any remediation. But if there's an ash borer within the tree, then that's a bigger concern.
And we're, you know, are we confident that there was an evaluation of the tree that said, you know, well, we can take out 1, 2, 5, 7, and 9, but these other 3 are indeed treatable, you know, or did they actually do the evaluation and say, no, all of them are in the same condition? And we don't know that in the particular case that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just, I think that's part of the evaluation and communication that should happen is, hey, we have this row of trees, somebody has evaluated it.
And to answer, I think, the second question that's there of will forestry plan arborist or other qualified persons identify what is infectious? At this time, I think when we create the forestry plan, that will be identified of what's currently infectious. But obviously, no one could have predicted the ash borer, those
Right.
aren't things that 20 years ago, well, I don't know, 50 years ago, we could have predicted. So those will be things that probably an arborist and classes that DPW employees attend, those will provide that information to educate the employees as well as the arborist.
And that's why we want it to be fluid, so that something like that comes up, we don't have to spend a lengthy period of time to be able to take down a tree that needs to go.
Yeah.
Is there more?
Yep, there's more, but wait, there's more, no. The last part is unjustified interference, and we kind of have to admit that we did not necessarily add additional language in this component.
And that specifically penalty was not addressed in this document further addressed in this document because the town attorney told us that we should not include it, which is the feedback this committee got from staff when they wanted to include a penalty. So that is why that's not included at this time. The town attorney felt that the code as it is, the town code as it is, and the way that this is being added to the town code as a local law, so it'll be a section within the zoning code, right? No.
Not,
A section within,
the general
sorry,
code.
the general code. Just to correct that. Since it's a section within the general code,
General provisions.
that penalty was already addressed in the general code.
So we just have to respond to that.
Is that penalty correct, what they're saying in that comment?
I thought it
Yeah.
was 114.
1-14 of the town code, they're saying?
Yes, Matt's pulling it up.
Yeah, that's in section 8, that was what was referred to. Yeah.
And then I believe there was a comment from the town board specifically on that section of a concern of how it applies to residents.
So they said, shouldn't it be section 14 as applied to residents? What does section 14 say? So what's the difference between 114 and 14? Because that's how it's worded in the comment.
I don't remember.
I would have to clarify, because, yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
is,
So what the town board member is referring to, as I assume you only mean 14, the wording that is being pulled is from section 114, which is referred
yeah,
to
let
in the
me
local
look
law,
at the-
correct?
We don't have a 14.
And what exactly did we say in regards to that in the
In-
tree code?
In violations and penalties, we specifically said it's section 8 of the local law. Violation of any provision of this article shall be subject to the penalties set forth in section 114 of the town code, which Matt had just brought
yeah,
up,
so
Okay.
that's-
which is this
it's
section.
Chapter 1, section
Okay.
14.
And that was under
penalty
the
for
advice
offenses.
of the town lawyer, that was the,
That was what we should refer to.
so I think
and
it would
part
just
of-
be appropriate to revisit with the town attorney, just to see if, just because we specifically did not separately address that because we were not comfortable with assigning penalties or.
Okay.
The secondary comment, though, is a little bit more of what if the resident is justified? Is there a due process?
So
and I
for,
would-
for any code violation, the code enforcement department has a documented process that they follow for enforcement, which includes but is not limited to sending a letter to the resident. I think they actually send a letter twice with a time frame for response. Eventually, it ends up going to the court system if they still do not resolve the concern or the code violation, and then the town courts will assign a final penalty. So the town employees, town staff do not give any penalties in fines or jail days. That comes from the court system in town.
So either, if the objection is that's too stiff of a penalty, it would be.
That would be up
causing the town
to, that
code
would,
to redo
yeah,
it.
that would not be us, right?
Right.
And then I do believe there's actually an appeal process for that as well. If a resident feels that they're not in violation of a town code, they can bring that to the town board as like a concern that they're,
You mean after the court has decided?
I mean, when they get their first letter saying that they
Oh.
violated a town code. Like I've seen residents go to the town supervisor's office and bring that up before and say, and acknowledge that they don't feel that
And
they
at that point,
had a
it's not at the
violation.
court.
No, it's before it gets there.
Right, so.
So,
I think that part of the concern here too is that if a resident, say, wants the cutting down of a tree to be delayed, and, that they won't have any opportunity for that to happen, or there's just the threat of there being a penalty, and by the time they're able to do anything, that the tree is down.
Are you talking about a tree on their own property or a town tree?
Has to be a town tree.
it has to be a
otherwise-
town tree.
Right, it would have to be a town tree, so,
I think it might be beneficial to meet the town board's hope for clarity to include something along the lines of how a resident, what process a resident could go through to object to a tree coming down.
And I think,
And maybe that's through the supervisor's office, or I don't know what that process is desired to be. I know right now if a resident has concern, they are always welcome to come to the supervisor's office and voice the concern, or come to the individual departments, and often that ends up at the supervisor's office if it's necessary. But I think maybe documenting a process for a resident to voice a complaint or concern might meet
yeah.
the
That-
town board's hope with that.
And I think that goes back to the need for advanced communication, so.
Right.
So taking that stand of trees that came down, if it was announced, we're taking these trees down, and somebody went to town board or supervisor and said, you know, hopefully there'd be an explanation of why the trees are coming down. In that was, was accepted, and so then I guess, yeah, maybe taking it through the town board or the town supervisor could say, well, we stand by our department's decision that these are infected and they need to go. I'm just playing that out, how might it work? Is that what you're thinking?
That kind of thing, yes.
So this one comment says, recall to mind residents stopping a DPW foreman and workers prior to tree removal in private neighborhoods. That shouldn't be an issue, right? Because that's private neighborhoods, wouldn't be a town tree.
I agree.
Yeah. So, and I think the other thing is, none of this really applies to like an RG&E coming through and cleaning.
Nope. RG&E has
electrical
rights
lines.
to handle any trees within their easements.
Yep. So, and I think that might just be what sometimes people see and connect the two as well. Is it,
It's the town, but it's not.
yeah.
Well, and there has been times that the town employs similar companies to what RG&E has employed.
Yep.
So that would explain some confusion for residents.
Yep. So, okay, Kevin, just to seek your advice here, do you feel that we've discussed these comments sufficiently, provided some sort of recourse for some of the clarification?
Yes, in my opinion.
Okay. Oh, he's good.
I know,
Very political, very good.
he's not gonna forget to say that part.
Because I honestly don't know, say,
Obviously.
for example, what Councilwoman Lee would say.
Okay.
You know, so.
So I think to start moving forward, Matt and I as staff can make those changes that we've discussed to the local law, and we can make the recommendation to the DPW to provide documents of procedures, as well as to answer the one specific question that was brought up in this session. And then lastly, to visit with the town attorney on penalties and how he feels it's appropriate for us to address that in this document.
Okay, we appreciate that effort.
Thank you.
And I hope that the notes of our discussion is also something that the town board will look forward to reading.
So
Yeah, and
the-
I can provide our minutes to them and call out the section that we
Okay.
specifically discussed the town tree law.
Is
Okay.
that a good enough response, or do they need something more formalized?
That is my current understanding of what they requested of us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Since that took the bulk of our time, let's see what else we have going on here. Our next thing is, there are no additional requests from the town board at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. Clean energy community actions.
Since our last meeting, we have received that we were approved, our fleet inventory was improved as one of the items for clean energy communities, and we have submitted application for our CCA program to be approved for points for clean energy community. We are waiting to receive application for the first grant that we're allowed to apply for $10,000. And once the CCA program is approved, we will look to apply for the second grant, which is for $50,000. Separate from those two items, we have started working with Color Penfield Green again on community campaigns and are hoping to have those presented this summer for clean heating, cooling, and energy efficiency. That's one. And then for electric vehicles. And those we'll also share information about those at the electric car show, which we are co-hosting the Arbor Day Celebration with.
Okay.
Were you able to go back and get credit for the purchase of the golf course? We were talking about that as,
That's for climate smart communities. At this point, we haven't tried to get credit for anything for climate smart communities.
okay,
That's the other program.
okay,
Yeah,
totally different.
And we have more information on climate smart communities later in the agenda.
Okay,
Okay, so just so I want a little clarification, we've applied for the $10,000 grant, or
We have not received the application to
received the
apply yet.
application? Okay.
The way the process works is we apply for them to accept the high impact action items that we've completed. Once we get to a certain point value, we have the opportunity to apply for grants, but they have to provide us the application and the timeline to complete the application. Generally, it's a 3-week timeline from when we get the application.
Holy cow.
Which is why we're already working on it. So we're already working on the application documents that we'll need to submit because we know what the application looks like because we've already done one before. It's kind of a process that we
Okay.
have to get invited to complete.
Okay.
But we have not received the grant applications for us to apply at this time.
Okay. Thank you for
So
clarifying that.
That timetable has not yet started.
Okay, and I just wanted to comment that we are extremely lucky to have such a good community group as Color Penfield Green to come alongside us for some of these, because they've definitely promoted our standing in the clean energy community program.
And by helping the town to complete the community campaigns that they've previously helped us to complete and taken such a large role in, they helped us to get high impact action grants, which are different than the point value grants in the past. And by helping the town to complete community campaigns in the future, they will bring us closer to getting more high impact action grants now that there is a new pond for us to work on.
New money. Okay, ready to move into old business? Our first one is the Arbor Day Celebration. Do you have anything else to really? Yes, we have stuff to
Yes.
talk about.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
So Matt is pulling up the tree and shrub program catalog from the Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. Matt did complete the form to start ordering shrubs because there were 5 choices and they were selling out quickly. So considering soil pH level, size of the plant at full growth, native plants were a first choice. The town wanted to move forward with American hazelnut as one of the options. However, that had already sold out by the time that we ordered it. So we did end up moving forward with the red osier dogwood as well as the northern bayberry. And we ordered 100 of each set.
Which is more than we had thought we would be able to do.
Previously, we discussed 150 plants total, and we ended up going with 200 plants total. We do have a date that we've previously discussed of April 20th. We are hoping to do the plant giveaway from 10 to 12 p.m. or 12:30 based on when the plants run out. The EV show, the electric vehicle car show that is co-located with this event will be from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. And at this event, the town supervisor will present a proclamation as part of the Arbor Day celebration on the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, as well as the Tree City USA.
Arbor Day component of it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we're hoping to include something in that proclamation about the EV car show as well, since we are co-locating and we see the benefit of the sustainability initiatives in that as well. So the big thing with committee members is the hope for committee members to attend we would hope for you to arrive prior to 10 a.m. to help set up. And Matt and I would get the plants ahead of time. We have been working with the DPW to sort out tree planting because we discussed that we wanted 2 trees to be planted at the community center. They agreed that they can do that. They'll end up planting them the Friday before, but they'll put kind of a ribbon or something on them to let residents know that those are the trees that were planted. We have not determined exactly what trees yet. That will be slightly dependent on what's available.
But not necessarily from purchasing from
No,
here,
they will
because
be
these are bare
They will
root.
be like 2-inch caliber,
Okay.
6 to 8 foot trees. So they will not be bare root trees.
Okay,
And we will not be planting any bare root trees or shrubs at the community center on that day.
okay.
Okay, so
I know that was a lot of information. Are
Yep.
there any questions, or is there anything that you guys think that we might be missing?
So are you, usually with the bare root trees, we have them in a baggie, they've got some gel that they've been dipped in?
do they come from the county, I think, however
Um,
they come from the county?
They don't come with gel that they're
No,
dipped
that's
in.
what that's what we've had to do in the past, so, I didn't know if we were going to do
Oh.
that again.
I don't think we did that last time.
Probably
I wasn't
not.
aware of that. I'm sorry.
I don't think we did,
I
we
think
probably
previously
didn't.
we had them in bags that had a small amount of water in it, or they were damp, like they were sprayed,
Okay,
so that the roots were damp. And then we gave out the trees previously in bags with a reference that explained how to plant them, as well as information on the specific tree. Matt and I discussed to not send a whole lot of papers with people that they might not need, potentially not bagging every single bush or shrub ahead of time, but bagging them as residents are taking them, so that if residents want maybe 2 bushes.
we can save bags.
We can both save the paper from bags, and then we can give them from a pile of flyers, the documentation.
So what's the bags? Are they like paper bags?
Yep.
Can we put a QR code on them?
Printing a QR code onto the bag itself.
Or a sticker?
Yeah, I would think either a sticker. I mean, it's something we can consider. But
That
yeah,
could be your
it's something.
instructions, just a
Or we
QR
just
code?
have a poster with QR codes and encourage them to take a
Scan the
photo,
QR
scan
code
it there.
on the table itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely
Save-
worth
Save the
considering.
paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just didn't think previously we would put a paper in each bag, and then some residents took multiple trees. So then they got all kinds of extra paper that they didn't actually
Right.
need. And we didn't want to waste that.
Could you possibly have some paper flyers for, I still have
I think
people
that's
at
appropriate, yep.
Oh, yeah.
an organization that
I mean,
we
my-
have to call or.
My
they-
father-in-law just recently learned how to use a QR code.
Yeah, I
so,
was gonna
like,
say, they're just
there's
not
people that
gonna
just don't
do
that yet.
that, and
Yep.
Yeah, but having that option, I'm sure, would cut down on some paper waste, so I think that's
People
worthwhile
would think we were
pursuing.
hip and
Yeah.
cool, too.
yeah. So, what time would you, because you want us there to bag some of the,
I think maybe arrive at 9:30, just to set up and any extra things that need to
Okay.
be done. And that's at the community center.
The community center.
Yep.
It's a
How many-
Saturday.
How
It's a
many?
Saturday.
How many of us
April
think that we
20th.
are available? You
I should be
guys-
right
So
now.
far, so good.
Okay,
So far, so good.
so I'm the only one with a potential conflict, so
I don't
that's
think-
not bad.
And
Round
I know
dance around,
that.
because there does
know-
get to be a rush at some point. I know some of it was good that they were bagged.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know that the town supervisor is planning on attending at least a portion of it and doing the proclamation. We'll also invite the town board members if they're interested in attending.
Okay. We did have a bit of discussion over quantities per family, per person, and I don't remember what we had come up with.
We did not come to a final
Okay.
decision. So if there's any recommendations on how many are allowed per person or per family, please let us know your opinion.
Okay.
one of
'Cause
each
the idea
kind?
was some families might
just do,
want,
like, one.
4 or 5. I was a little wary of somebody saying I can use 20, and then us not
I
having
think-
enough for anybody else,
I think
but,
historically, we really only handed out one of each kind to a family and not,
My understanding was that we would hand at least one of each if they were
Yes.
interested. And that if someone came up and asked for, I think once we gave out 10 because they were looking to do some buffering or something. And it was one person that asked, I think near the end of an event. We ended up giving out 10 trees at one point.
yeah, that's, I mean, that we've done in the past, or
Yeah.
people came back towards the end, when, one year when there was lots
Well, and
available
His-
that,
Historically, some years, there were 300 trees.
Yes.
Or 500 trees.
yeah, okay.
So
yes, so, last year we didn't have, so many, but yeah, it was one of each kind per household.
I would say
Not per-
max
not-
of 2.
Not per child, and I think we didn't say two, you could have two of this, one kind, because we wanted to distribute, it was one of each, or just
Okay.
one.
So-
And it doesn't have to be that, I'm just
So
saying
you're
that's what we've
recommending
done.
2 of each?
No, just
Just
a max
do
of
one of
2.
each, max of 2,
It could be
okay.
one of each, or it could be 2 of one kind, just do
Okay, well, if
2.
that's what because if there's a run on a favorite, then it,
Well, then,
we have to
then
decide.
if you, it is first come, first serve.
Yeah.
So if you have,
Okay,
if they have a special feel, but based on the 2 shrub offerings, it would be hard for me to imagine one of them being overly selected over the other, because they're both very different and, quite lovely.
Yeah. I personally don't like dogwood, so I would just
Yeah,
do
and I
that.
personally
Okay.
love dogwood,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it
Yeah,
would
that's the
be,
same,
so
like-
you and I could
I
swap.
thought we swapped.
There you go.
okay.
Okay, so I think the conclusion was that at least throughout most of the event, it would be 2 each, and at the end of the event, if there's someone that comes back, we will hand out extras.
Yes.
Would we want to let people know, like if
If
somebody
somebody
walks
comes,
up?
if somebody walks up and says, man, I really could use 10 to do a border, we can say,
Please
Let them
come
know
back
that
at 12,
come at-
and
Yeah.
if we have them, we will provide them to
Yeah.
you.
yes,
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds
to do that. Okay. Any other discussion needed for Arbor Day?
Oh, I would also like to share that we're reaching out to a couple groups to see if they want a table, as well as the EV car show does the same thing.
Yes. So hopefully, like Color Penfield Green will be on hand, as well as some of the other organizations in town, Healthy Lawns.
How many EV cars are they giving away? Maximum one per person?
Do not have that information.
I think that's the Super Bowl commercial,
Oh,
so
never
I think you have to wait for that one, too. Okay.
And I think it's Healthy Yards Monroe.
Healthy Yards, that's the one, yes. Okay, Town Flower, this has reappeared on our agenda.
We did want to share that the town historian provided us with a resolution from 1973 that adopted the clematis as the town flower. It did not specify which clematis is the town flower, and there's a few different varieties of clematis. So we have reached out to try and get a little more information, just to see if there's a specific, and then we'll look to work with the town board to help determine if there's an interest in choosing a new one or reestablishing the clematis as the town flower. And there may be feedback that there's a desire for this committee to do something else pertaining to that.
Do you know if that a native species?
I know that one is. I know that one is invasive, and I know that there's another one.
And the one that is native is not quite the clematis that we picture when we think of it.
Oh,
It's kind
At
of an
least
unassuming
between Cynette and
white
I,
flower that coats trees, or coats, it's like a covering kind of thing, so.
And-
So it's,
In reading the resolution too, it really seems that it's in celebration of the cultivated clematis,
Yes.
because it's,
Oh.
you know,
which is not
referencing-
native.
which is not
Yes.
native.
But not
Right.
invasive.
Yep.
So, yes. So it's kind of interesting. It is kind of a
It's the clematis vine.
red,
They
white,
didn't
and
put a
blue.
genus and species?
They sure
No,
did not.
but I mean, if you consider the state flower of New York is just the rose.
Yep.
So it's not really, I don't think there's no standard on what, is specified as how you celebrate a flower in your community, and for the state flower to be the rose, there's an invasive rose. There's
There's so many varieties.
so many
Yes.
varieties. So I don't know if just saying that the clematis, there's a regulated New York State species of clematis, if that, I mean, because I don't know, it is important to recognize the historical context and the historical significance of this, and to say that it needs to be changed just because that there is a regulated clematis, you could say the same for the state rose, so.
I'm not
it's
saying it
worthy
needs to
of
be changed, I just
Oh,
asked
sure.
if
Oh, no,
they
no, sure.
define
No,
what it
of
was.
course, but it's, yeah, there's a lot of, it's a complex discussion for sure.
So
Yes.
we'll throw it to the town board to give us some guidance on whether or
that's
not we want to
Hmm.
consider, perhaps we would keep this one and then also add in a
A native
A
flower.
native, well, that
flower.
seems like a
Right.
good compromise.
So did anybody know this? Like, I'm just saying, like,
I found
if,
where-
Apparently not.
The town historian brought it to our attention
Yes.
when we asked.
that's great. So usually when you have a town anything, it should be recognized and declared somewhere, right? Like,
You're
Well, that's-
looking at the declaration right there.
That is why
the
there's an
official-
option to redeclare,
Okay.
Yeah.
and present that to the town and acknowledge it and celebrate it.
Yep,
But I do think that we should take our direction from the town board on
Yep.
that.
okay.
So
did they say why they picked that one?
No.
In,
Oh, yeah, it does in the whereases. There is
And
a
I can
very.
share the proclamation with you, but yes, so there was a collaboration between nurseries in Penfield and the garden clubs in Penfield to support this establishment.
And
So
there's,
the-
there's like historical documentation about those different nurseries and how they started, and
Okay.
there's actually a fair amount of long-term historical information on it.
Okay, so saying the D.S. George Nursery of Penfield is famous growers of the clematis.
Yep.
And they're out of business now, apparently?
I don't know.
It's another question for Mrs. Knauer, isn't it?
I mean, we could probably find that one out.
Oh,
but-
okay.
Daniel's got the,
So I found the one that is actually native to this area. It's the Clematis Virginia.
Yeah, it's not very lovely, is it?
It's okay.
I think that's subjective.
It's okay.
It's a white flowering
I don't know. if I can-
shrub kind of thing.
so I get the history
Yeah, you're gonna try to show it on,
aspect
see if you can show it.
Oh.
I don't know if it would be able to show.
and- No,
You
it's
need-
not- it's not horrible.
It's not horrible, but it's just like any other flowering shrub that, it's not ugly. It's just not like lovely clematis vine that I think we all picture with the big,
I know, with the purple,
Yeah.
with, I get the nod to history and, you know, celebrating history and such, but, you know, with the current climate, you know, of looking towards native species and stuff, I mean, we're not gonna obliterate that one. My opinion, I'll quote Kevin there, in my opinion, it would be nice to say, well, we've got this, but, you know,
Let's pick a native one as well.
Let's pick a native and have town members
yeah.
voice and vote for some native flower.
Yeah.
Yep, so let's let the town board take on that and they can give us
But I
their,
gave my opinion,
Their
so.
feedback.
their feedback and we will proceed accordingly.
It's
And-
decisions like this that made me run. Yeah.
You mean run for town board or run?
Oh, that's a good one,
He doesn't need
yeah.
to define.
Okay, we are at the 8-minute mark here.
Yep.
So our next agenda item is the Climate Smart Communities Review, which I actually would like to go ahead and table till the next meeting, if that's okay with you guys, just given what we have.
And if you want, I can just give our super.
Go ahead.
5-second brief.
5 seconds.
We are working on putting together a document letting you know what we've accomplished. Did I take 8 seconds?
You did it in
good.
3.
I tried
did
really
good.
hard.
I
did good.
counted, I did the Mississippi one, too.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. That's what we really hope for. And we did, Matt sent out the links for us to do our due diligence of what all the potential actions are. So, committee membership update is our next item in old business.
I am just sharing that the town board did perform interviews, and we look forward to finding out who they will choose as a member or members for this committee.
Ooh, maybe members?
Yes.
When will that occur?
So Kevin, you want to talk about members?
Sure. We did We did interviews, and unfortunately, three members of the board were there, two weren't able to be there. So part of the delay in making the decision is the three that were there getting together with the two who weren't to kind of confer. After the first meeting that I attended, I did talk to the supervisor because I felt that it would be beneficial for the size of this, for increasing the size of this committee to at least be considered. And he was in agreement. So we are looking at increasing the size to 7 so that it would still be an odd number. And if this occurs, the way that we would do it is we posted for one position, so we would fill that position, then we would post again for 2 more so that it would be an open and transparent process.
And you could consider maybe who you did not choose the first go-round,
Correct.
If they apply again,
if they have to apply again, okay.
right?
How many applicants did you get?
We only got 2 for this, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, considering how difficult it is to fill committees sometimes. We were also filling historic preservation, and there was about 5 for that one.
Oh, my goodness.
Nice, yeah.
Okay. Okay, moving on quickly, event updates. Did you get anything?
Just very quickly, because
Okay.
we had the seed and house plan swap. I'm still waiting for details coming from that. But Meg Meyer shared that for the native seed sowing, the art of native seed sowing event. There were a few handouts that I'll share with the committee here. And then also there was 15 members that were, 15 residents that were there in attendance. But yeah, those were the 2 events that had occurred in January. We'll continue to provide, events as they, event updates as they become available for these ones that we highlight, but.
And the native seed sowing class that they put on, that also contributes to the Mayor's Monarch Pledge.
So yeah, that would wrap up event updates. And then if we
We
want to
have
move into
New business would be next, unless somebody thinks of any old business that I have omitted. We'll move into new business, which starts with upcoming events.
And many of the details for these are provided on the town website. I'll just pull that up. And then for those that are put together or organized by the Penfield Rec Department, a lot of those details are on the Penfield Recreation website. But yeah, so the events are often detailed here on the town calendar. You can get information about any one of those. The one that wouldn't be on there, the Conservation Tree and Shrub Program orders, due March 1st at 4 p.m. I mean, that's where we're getting our shrubs from, but it's open to the public again, so that information they can get on the soil and
And
water
apparently they
website.
sell out of things.
They
so
sure do.
Yeah.
Order now.
Yes.
They've already started
Yes.
selling out.
But yeah, so the winter snow night out and full moon hike on February 23rd, enhancing your existing landscape and gardens with native plants on February 15th. The shrub program, then Color Your Life Green on March 12th, Rethinking the American Lawn on March 28th, and then the Earth Day program on April 22nd.
And the majority of those events are through PennRec.
Right.
So feel free to look at their brochure if you want more details on them.
Yes.
Okay, and then our Arbor Day celebration is on April 20th.
That is
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, more of
Yes.
that.
Okay, we don't want to make sure, that.
As well as the EV car show.
The EV car show. Thank you very much for that partnership as well. Okay, do we have any other old business new business to discuss?
I don't think at this time.
Okay, in that case, I would love to our next meeting is March 7th, 2024. Did you comment, are you traveling?
I'll be traveling, I'll be missing that one.
Okay. He's got this exotic tour planned, so.
Ooh.
For work.
For work, we should say, for work. Okay. May I have a motion to close our meeting? Adjourn.
Motion.
Okay,
Second?
okay. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So I'm going to call this meeting of the Energy and Environmental Conservation Committee adjourned as of 2 minutes to 6 on February 8th.